So last year we actually did an event in New York around the General Assembly of the United Nations with Angel and her boss, Congresswoman McCormick, Shifless McCormick from Florida, and it got us thinking we need to do more with the diaspora. And Mr. Sidney here spent some time in Africa working on AI. So this year, let's do a panel on exposing the people here with because there's a lot going on in international that is financial and policy oriented that we need to talk about. For instance, the G20 is being held in America this year, and and the C20. So we've been contacted by some people about the C20, about being part of that, whether we would be one of the lead Sherpas for the C20. And I thought we need to talk about it. So, anyways, I will let you guys introduce yourselves. We got your bios. Everyone knows who you are. So, but you should spend a few minutes talking about your experience with Africa, why you think it's important, why we should know about it, and we'll go down to Angel, and then we'll do some Q&A.
All right, great. Cool. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Arthur Sidney. I am a lawyer, strategist, public policy individual that's focusing upon tech and other things. I have many interests. What is not in my bio is that, I'm an Africanist. I've been throughout the diaspora. I've studied the diaspora, speak a number of languages, one of which is Kiswahili because of my interest in the diaspora. And really look for the synergies, right? So we talk about the diaspora. There's more African Americans in Brazil than in the U.S. because we're very U.S. centric generally. We're like, it's only us. Woe is me. But there are blacks everywhere, right? And I mean historically through centuries, not just a new phenomenon through migration, but whether it's the Siddhis and the Sithis in India and Pakistan, which have been long-standing communities, which we don't talk about. We are everywhere. So not only was there the West Africa, the transatlantic slave trade, there was also the East African slave trade, which took us through all around the globe, and also the slavery in Europe, which allowed us to exist. And so that's been something that's been the through thread of my studies and just my existence, wherever possible, trying to find, as I said, those synergies, find those connections, look upon ways to build it, because we're all one. The Latinos have the idea of la raza. We don't necessarily have that to the same extent. Now, there's balkanization and factors within the Latino community, but what I've tried to do is look for the connections, the africanité, to use a French phrase, and negritude. All of these things has really excited me to find connections. And so I've done some work on AI governance in Africa, and I'll stop talking briefly. So, but you give someone a microphone, give a lawyer a microphone, like give it back. One of the things that I find so fascinating as I become a student of Africa, I'm not an expert. Africa's 54 countries. Sometimes people say more or less, depending, but around 54 countries. Is that when it comes to AI, Africa, speaking generally, it's 54 countries. There are many countries in Africa that have very sophisticated AI rules, which is amazing because the United States does not. The EU does. UK has some, but the 54, many of those countries have very sophisticated AI principles, and I think in large part, having just been in Uganda in October 2025. The reason why that's happening in large part, I'm also an international trade attorney by background, so I first started. Cut a long story short, the reason why I think African countries are so strident on getting ahead of the curve is they have a recollection of what happened during the Bretton Woods systems in 1948 and then 1994. So though that was the progenitor of the WTO system, right? The trading system that kind of left the global South, not just Africa, the global South out of the equation. So the Europeans and the Americans got together and cooked up the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and it benefited them. And then they remodernized it in 1994. I was actually a practicing attorney helping the government with their WTO obligations and helping at that time African countries as well as others accede to the WTO. But what I was doing unfortunately, I mean, is that when the African countries would ask for help, we would give them technical assistance and tell them how to use the laws that were really made for not them. And so African countries and many in the global south realize and have a memory of what happened. So now they're like, hey, there's so many billions of dollars in GDP with AI, so much opportunities to use it for good and largesse for the country. Let's get ahead of it this time. Let's get a seat at the table before things go haywire. And I still think, notwithstanding the fact that many of the countries are more advanced when it comes to AI, there's still things that countries need to be aware of. So I'm working now with clients in South Africa, for example, on some pilot programs. Okay, I'll say this and I'll shut up. Because the other thing I mentioned earlier in the previous panel, that because there's no hard framework in the U.S. on AI principles are being exported around the world really through procurement language in the contracts. And so that's problematic, because when it comes to recourse, when something goes wrong, who do you sue? Who's accountable? Who has authority? How do you hold them accountable? And moreover, you have now nation states that are you have de facto laws through the contract that are now affecting nation states. And so those vendor contracts become so important, as we see, Anthropic and others are making moves to deploy in African countries. What does that mean locally for data sovereignty? What does it mean for sovereignty period vis-a-vis the various northern countries, or the countries of the global north? All things that have to be considered. Africa, to its credit, has got an explosion of youth, right? The majority of the people on the continent are young, which is a benefit. Africa's got a lot of minerals and resources. I forget the minerals, what they're called, but critical minerals. Which are used in chips and everything else. And so I think it's a real moment and an opportunity that the continent writ large can level set and work to get not compensation, but get a seat at the table vis-a-vis these Western and Northern countries. So thank you. I look forward to the conversation.
Angel?
So amen to that. What else can I say after talking? You go for everything. What else should I? Except my name is Angel Kwebo. And I apologize. I'm a lawyer too. An international trade lawyer too. My apologies. I'm redeeming myself for that. So as Kevin said, and as what's her name again? I forgot. Yes, so we are living a very interesting moment where we are witnessing a very important geopolitical shift. The Cold War type of framework is over, and the opportunity that creates is that people are now have the freedom to innovate. When I say innovate, it's in terms of policies, in terms of creation, and even here in the U.S. now, with the President Trump, he has completely changed the paradigm shift. And then he has also given opportunity, one, for people who are not to fact check, other people, all the politicians to lie. But what I'm learning from this experience is the fact that you can be bold and come up with new ideas. If somebody can be on the Oval Office and lie to you, that means you can come up with crazy ideas. Because at least you can fact check your idea, you can fact check the policy. For us, Global Africa Community, when I say Global Africa, there's a new concept that was created after African Diaspora Initiative. African Diaspora was born in 2003 when they created 6 regions. So now we kind of all aware of our existence. There's data on how many diaspora we have. We passed a period where we debated about unity, debating about who is African diaspora, or continental diaspora, or whatever. They have concepts. We are diverse, and we create all this diversity into the global diaspora concept. And it came out of the Afreximbank initiative. Remember in the 60s now, or even before the 60s, we fought for our liberties. We fought for our civil rights. We were not intentional in fighting for economic right. We can't talk about freedom if you don't have economic freedom. It's only that financial independence that gives you dignity to exercise your civil right. So that's one thing that was kept on the side, that now it's coming back. And thank God, now you can see financial institutions that are financing African projects. if you look at the case of Nigeria, for example, during Abacha area, Abacha was a dictator. He was blacklisted everywhere. But Nigeria was able to survive because of the financial system. The market was large enough for the private sector to exist because it's 200 million people, 271 million people. And after Abacha, you have Obasanjo, who were intentional about creating the African private sector. He created local content. And then after that, he consolidated the banking system and allowed the Nigerians to take control of the financial system. So now they have a financial system to support the private sector. This is how you see the biggest oil and gas company, tech companies are Nigerian owned, let's say African owned. It came through a process. So now on the multilateral financial institution, you are African Development Bank, who's a development bank, but all the board members are African countries and sometimes European and American. So they still have a level of control. So Afrexim Bank was born out of ADB, African Development Bank, but to finance trade. So now you have dollars behind the private sector. And that Afrexim Bank now created the Global Diaspora Initiative, where they're now financing projects in Caribbean. They create a pipeline of relationship or economic relationship between African countries and Caribbean. Now, where I'm a little bit passionate, and I think I'm intentional, I think I can play a role. I was in Accra 2 years ago when they celebrated the 50-year anniversary of, it was the 400 years, the 1676, the year return. You have the year return. Then you have the 1979. Oh, I forgot this time. No. The 400 years anniversary of the first ship arriving in the shore of the U.S.
Oh, okay. Oh,
It wasn't the name of the date. What year was it?
1619, no?
And there was a project.
The
1619. Yeah. So it was year return, 400 years of end of slave. So they all gathered in Accra under the umbrella of Afrexim Bank, and they invited the Caribbean countries as well. So they call that virtual year of return. So instead of having a slave ship going, now they create an investment flow from the continent to the Caribbean and the U.S. The missing link was African American. Because the global diaspora is the Caribbean, some of Asia, the European, but on the continent you have 1.3 billion people, and then in the diaspora you have maybe 200 million people. That's close to 2.5 billion people. That's the global diaspora. But the part that is really important is the African American alone. They're only 23 million or 35 million, but the economic power is what? 1.2 trillion.
2 trillion, yeah. Something like that.
You see, that's a lot compared to the continental market, which is $29 trillion. Within the contract of building that continental market with the African free trade area. So they're building that continental market. It's going to be $29 trillion in GDP. You have African American alone today at 1.2 trillion. Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah. So, and that's why when we have this conference, this convention, this meeting in New York, I was saying that I don't understand why the entire world is meeting in New York. Everybody has the programs, the Chamber of Commerce, the Corporate Conference in Africa, the think tanks. They all have programs in New York where all the leaders are there. 1 hour here, 2 hours there. Mm-hmm. African Americans don't have any entity. Mm-hmm. Right. So I've been fighting for that for years. Finally, the congressman say, okay, and then you have to, Kevin, please, can you do? It was even hard for us to find an organization to come to New York. Thank God Kevin was ready to put his resources to create that program. And it was very successful. It was very successful. And I think you need to slowly bring, and even when you're doing research, when you look at the $1.2 trillion that's purchasing power, $4 trillion in terms of economy. But now if you look at, we did that research, look at African American in critical mineral, African American in agriculture, the biggest 4 list African American businesses, sports, entertainment, media, and maybe finance a little bit with a little bit. So how can we get them to invest in hospitality, in critical mineral, and especially now that everybody is rushing to critical minerals. 10 years ago, you can't talk about that. It was mining, it was not popular. Environment degradation, human rights violation, child labor. Now that we even the Democrats have the clean energy initiative. If you want the clean energy, you need the minerals. Yeah. You want to go to war, we need the minerals. What? So where the minerals are coming from? It's coming from China. Okay. China is supplying, controlling 75, even 80% of critical minerals in the world. They don't have critical minerals. They don't have. Yeah. Where are they getting it from? Africa. Australia is a big player in critical mineral. The congressman went to Australia for an energy conference. They call critical mineral, critical mineral. They have a little bit. As a matter of fact, they have technology, but they don't have the minerals. Where the minerals coming from? So now today, okay, the president, there's a war in Congo. Everybody know Congo about women dying, rape, blah, blah. We all know that all our cell phones, blah, blah, come from Congo. But for 30 years, it took Trump to say, oh, because his mindset is all about business. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to create peace between Rwanda and DRC. Okay, the peace is to create an environment for them to exploit. Yeah. So now, if we need that conversation, where are we? Yeah. So they're blocking the visa. They pretend they're going to have a investment partnership with the African continent. At the same time, they're blocking the visa. So that means that we can have partnership with you, but you're not allowed to come here. But guess what? Namibia has critical mineral. He told the media yesterday he's not coming to the U.S. Have you ever seen a seller go to the buyer? Right. If you want to buy, you come to the buyer. Right. So they don't understand that they have this new generation of leaders. I mentioned that in the meeting at the Capitol the other day. They told me I was crazy. They said, no, the president, blah, blah. You have to forget the fact that leaders is just president. Right. Presidents are managers. But now the African private sector is vibrant. The banks, the financial system is vibrant. The unicorn, all the biggest unicorn, where are you coming from? Africa. So the leaders, when you talk about leadership, it's not just the president, it's not just the ministers. Those presidents and ministers are applying to, if Dangote wants to talk to a president, he will call the president, come to the president, we'll go and meet him where he is. So that's where the Africa is moving now. And it's a big opportunity for African Americans as well, because at least now if you go to a country, you don't need to necessarily go and say, I want to talk to the minister. Yeah. I want to go to the president. No. If you find the right partner, and all of them are connected with the diaspora because they went to school here, every single African businessman have an African American friend. Or somebody that you admire, an artist, a football player, blah, blah. It's very easy. But we have this syndrome. African Americans have the same syndrome that Nigerian has. They're spoiled by the size of the market. Why am I going to suffer to go do business in Namibia if I can build my hotel here? Nigeria, the same thing. Why am I going to suffer and go do business in Kenya if I do business in Lagos alone? Lagos alone has the size of a country. So African American Nigeria have the same. It's you're blessed, and that creates a limitation. So the only time you saw Nigeria go outside of Nigeria is when Buhari came into power. Things became very tough. They start diversifying. And they start looking at, where we can do business in Angola because Tinubu is going after my business here. Let me go to Angola. Let me go to the Caribbean. Venezuela. You have all Nigerian oil and gas company in Venezuela. Yeah, in Barbados you have companies. In what is this country where you have President Ali? It's a small island who has a large reserve next to Venezuela. The president's name is Ali. Let me come back to me. So you have Nigerians doing business there. So I'm trying to, as much as I can, trying to preach to African Americans that there's opportunities and seize them because the time is, they're really short, especially now when, people get killed. You have to walk around the street and show your passport. Even with the passport, you can still be deported. Right. You have options. Right. You have options. If I want to deport you, you can, I have a friend in Cameroon, Angel, please. Can we just... you guys have options in case things go south here.
So it's good. So start with you, Angela. The question, like you mentioned, the largest African American kind of businesses, but ag. How would an African American get into the ag business in Africa? How would they form partnerships? That was something they were interested in.
Okay, number one, do you have a Black Farmers Association?
Correct.
So now, in Africa, it's all relationship, right? So it depends on what type of agriculture. Agriculture is large.
Say beef.
Number one, some African producers are looking for market access. And then in agriculture, where you make money is in the process side. It's not on the raw side. So you can have access to raw material, process it here for the American market. Let me give you one example, cashew nut. Do you think it's normal for cashew nut industry to be controlled by Indian? all the cashew production, they have Indian company in Cote d'Ivoire, in Benin, and the rest. The farmers are producing cashew nut. The cashew nut are purchased, sent to India, processed there, and they come back to the African market and come back to the entire world market. But the cashew nut is not produced in India. It only took one or two big families to be in Cote d'Ivoire and to have friends in Benin. They create an organization. They have access to the market. African Americans do the same thing. You have access to the American market, which is what? $40 trillion? Yeah. So you have the co-packers company here, the processing company here. You have all the minority contract. You can be part of suppliers, minority suppliers, so all those big firms. You just need to identify your supplier. So normally, ADM, Cargill, all those big companies should contract with African American firms to have access to African product. Yeah. That's the logic. Yeah. Okay. And you can just do that because African, they have the land, they can produce, but don't have access to market. And the people who have access to market are not American. People are producing stuff, they're going straight to the Middle East in raw. So it only takes information is power in agriculture. I used to run this women agriculture initiative where I try to empower women in agriculture. I did it out of Morocco. When I did the first conference, I have women coming from 22 countries. The next day, I have a company called me from Luxembourg looking for somebody to produce spirulina. They were ready to give me 1.8 million euro to make it available for the women to produce spirulina. Unfortunately, I was not a farmer. I was just depressed after running Hillary campaign. I was in this women movement. I went to Morocco. My sister lived there. I said, let me just do a women conference. And I said, let me pick agriculture because that's where women are playing a role in the entire value chain. But I had that, and the women that I invited to the conference, I didn't know them enough to say I'm recommending this person. So, but now it tells me that you can do that. During that conference, you can easily do maybe vetting. Yeah. So have information who does what and prepare those women for that market. Gotcha. You know, but in Africa, 1.8 million euros is a lot of money just to train them to produce spirulina because the laboratory was ready to acquire, to purchase an entire spirulina and package it here for laboratory to create nutrition product that they will probably send back to Africa or send back to one of those NGO that are fighting nutrition in Africa.
How do we get
Even I can help answer that question because the U.S. Department of Commerce has a program, and when you sign up with them, it's not even that expensive. And you tell them what country you want to trade.
Gold Key.
Gold Key program. I did it for healthcare, but then they'll set up all the meetings and even start with vetting some of the people, and then you can go there and start working on trade. That's the easiest way to do it from what I can see.
This is one thing because here, for example, if you have a chamber of commerce, there are many chambers of commerce here. When those leaders are coming, you get to see the opportunity. You go there, the embassy can help you to some extent. Because at the end of the day, the really things are happening where weddings, funerals, blah, blah. This is where you build relationship. You have to be on the ground. Find a way to be on the ground. When I left Congress and I went to the private sector, for 10 years I was doing private sector. The reason why I was able to survive compared to my colleagues that were in Washington, consulting is not easy. They're all looking for lobbying contracts. They sit there. I can go to any country and stay for 3 months because I have friends everywhere. It would take me to pay the hotel maybe for 1 week. If I'm on a station, I always have somebody. I'll call somebody here, Kevin here. Okay, I'm in, and it's like let's say for example, Haiti. Yeah. I'll say, I'm in Haiti. Oh, my cousin is there, and I'll go there. I will stay the 2 months that I need to really understand because there's no the challenge of Africa, and I say it's challenging, but it's not really challenging because here in America is where you have different challenges. They will tell you to get this contract, you have to do X, Y, and Z. It's no guarantee. You spend a lot of money, you do all this overhead, but it's no guarantee we get the contract. Right. Africa is the same thing. There's no roadmap. You can just get a contract like this. Oh, okay, Angel, I like you. Kevin, come over, I have a contract here, an opportunity here, and that's it. Yeah. Because a friend told me I want to have this problem. He trusts my judgment. I will send in Kevin, and then that's it. Somebody will come, you do all the commerce department, all the vetting, will not get anything. You see, I'm saying that the comparative advantage that you have, the cultural and cultural competency, that connection, it has no price.
Right, right.
You need to take advantage of. Because after you use all those programs available, and now it's no longer available, because right now, they don't care about that anymore. So they decide in advance that, okay, I'm going to go to critical mineral, and going to critical mineral, I already have my 5 companies here that I advocate for.
Yeah, yeah.
So do headline critical mineral all once, but nobody around will know who those companies are. Remember the Power Africa initiative.
Yeah.
It was a huge initiative, $5 billion, blah, blah. It was 2 or 3 companies.
Yeah, got all the money.
And a little bit of money to do conferences, to promote Power Africa, we're doing things. But at the end of the day, politics is politics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's...
So I'll throw this to Arthur. What have you done business in the, what? Oh, Martha, I'm sorry. As we, given everything Angel just said, break it down for, if you're not a big energy company or a big company, like, how do you break into them? I mean, I know we've got market access, but how do you, if you have trouble having resources, then how do you get the resources you need to even participate or play in that space? I mean, you've been after, you've got invited to speak, but if you wanted to do something dealing with AI or you wanted to do something dealing with critical minerals, what would be your suggestion about how people should look at this?
I can only speak from what I know, and I think I've shared with you offline. I mean, I've been approached by companies on the continent in South Africa and others to help them with, governance frameworks, et cetera. But they've approached me. I've not solicited them. In large part, it's because, my thinking, appearing in journals, on a lot of African journals, talking about what I see. I've been warning people of, techno-imperialism so that we can avoid, as I shared, some of the problems of the past. And so that resonates with startups. Africa's got a lot of different startups now that are being started by young people in, their own mother tongues, incorporating their own culture, et cetera. And so again, they're taking a page that's different from what happened prior. They're making sure that things are autochthonous, that it's indigenous, it's from the bottom up, and incorporates their own, ideology, worldview. In fact, in AI discourse, it's called the Ubuntu, which in Swahili is like, togetherness. We are one. We are not one without the other. So you need together to do that. And so I'm very excited by that. And I can't say how to get to those companies. I just know they've been coming to me because of, my stance on things. I'm very vocal, very visible. I've traveled on the continent, sharing my ideas on AI governance and what I did with respect to work on AI here with the Congress, even in the private sector, some of the language that I helped get into the report. The AI report that was published in December 2024. And so because of that, it's opened up opportunities for me. And so it's just, it's been great. And then, working with the governments themselves is the next frontier that I'm experiencing in my practice so far. But they've solicited me just by being in those rooms.
Gotcha.
So by going over there and discussing and talking on panels, they have solicited me. So a lot of things, as you know, for the students, I think they've left is, being in the room, just showing up, the opportunities can present themselves.
So the question back to Angel, how would you, how can we leverage the G20 and all the activities around G20? Is there a way, with the C20, the B20, and the Women's 20, all those things that all those activities that kind of bubble up from the G20? I mean, is that a way is there a way to leverage that in this space, or is there something else we should be looking at?
Absolutely, because the business community, they operate in code. So the client that I had doing business development or strategic development is to make sure that they've met the profile to be in certain rooms. So when you're in that room, they're assuming that you're already part of the clique.
Okay.
back in the days, I'm talking about the African side because that's where I grew up. You had to be part of certain club to be able to have friends abroad. I'm not going to name any club, secret club. So to make sure you have friends abroad when you go to Italy, you have your brother in Italy, but you don't have that anymore. Now it's, are you part of the Afexim Bank ecosystem? That means they're assuming that you are a certain level of business, a certain level of credibility to get in. The same thing for G20, for example, or World Economic Forum. If you invite by World Economic, if you're in that room, they're assuming that you are a certain level of credibility.
Right.
It helps. So I always advise my clients, okay, this is the type of business you want to do. I'm advising you to be friends with C, X, Y, and Z to be there.
Gotcha.
And I want to make sure that if you come to Washington, okay, you need to be friends with Kevin, and Kevin will bring you to Congress. And then when you're there, the ecosystem knows that, okay, they can engage with you. It's like he was saying that he doesn't have to solicit contract. Because he's there, he's talking to certain people, his position, he's writing articles and so magazine that give it credibility. Then now they come to you.
Gotcha.
But because the other culture, other thing that is very cultural with African is that we are really good in America here at communication. We know how to package stuff. We know how to present ourselves. And it's not always, you speak it until you make it, right? So, and that's our culture.
Right.
Africa is not the same thing. You can see somebody wearing a boo-boo looking like nothing, but the guy has 1,000 employees.
Gotcha.
But you have nothing that shows that you have 1,000 employees.
Right.
You understand? So you have to, so when you approach them, it's not the same thing. That there's an African proverb that says, c'est la rivière qui va vers l'océan. It's a river that goes to the ocean.
Right.
So you always have to position in a way that you be the ocean, he's your river. So when you get that, then it becomes easier for you to cut your contract. If not, you'll be entertaining. So the G20 is important if you manage to be in that room. Yeah.
If I could just add really quickly, I think also to move the conversation from a sort of Eurocentric North perspective, I think one of the often overlooked modalities and mechanisms that you have on the continent is the African Union itself, which is powerful, and I think working with them gives them additional credence and authority, particularly for trying to do business on the continent. So the African Union, for example, has protocols on AI. Again, as I mentioned, generally you have a balkanized system of very advanced AI on the continent by country: South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, so on and so forth. Those are some of the ones that are making really rapid movements when it comes to AI. But the glue that connects all of them and provides almost like a level set, almost like a constitutional base, is the AU's initiatives, the African Union. And so similarly, I think that's a governance mechanism or governing body that one could address and help them. You can avail yourself of the opportunities through working through the African Union. So I think that is an opportunity that is often overlooked rather than the G7, the G20. All of those apparatus go directly. I would offer, in addition, it's not an and or, it's both. Also avail yourself to African, trading region groups and the AU.
We've run out of time. Do you have any questions? All right. Cool. Well, yeah, go ahead.
So the continent right now, there's everybody's rushing to the continent, and all the governments have already borrowed a lot of money. So it's always very useful when you go with the project. I mean, you have the financing already. So especially when you're minority. When I say minority, you could be black, you could be a woman, because reality is there's a deficit of credibility when you're black and when you're a woman. They all assume that when you're white that you have access to money. Because they have this perception that the power is white, the money is white, like the Rothschild, the Rockefeller, they're all white. So the perception is, except in Nigerian, a perception is. If you're black, if you're African American, I'm assuming that you don't have access to power. You don't have access to money. So when you go to the continent, it's always good to before go to identify who's going to be your financier. So when you go there, you say, this is what I'm bringing.
Right.
That the door will be easy. And you can have access to funding from anywhere, from the bank here, from all the other places. Because the difference between being on the ground and being here is that no, we have more opportunities here than they have on the continent. If they have to travel to meet those opportunities, and we have them here.
Right.
So you can lock that in advance when you go to, you partner with some institution here in advance, or I'm an American company, I have I'm doing technology, for example. Okay, I'll go to FXIM Bank, okay, I'm going to do this technology, FXIM Bank or Exim Bank, Exim Bank or DFC. They'll tell me, okay, we have financing available for Angola, for DRC, blah, blah. You know that in advance. You know that Exim Bank, we finance country, this and so product in Angola and Nigeria. And you're a tech company. So you can lock that in advance. Now, you go to the African country and say, okay, I want to supply you with data centers, for example. You know Exim Bank will provide you the guarantee for your bank who finances here. The only thing you need is an African government to do the purchase order and to sign an MOU with you.
Right.
So you lock that in advance. I have a friend who does that, and he's very, very successful. I think last year he announced $250 million. Sebastian. You know Sebastian? Thierry Wanji. What he's selling African digital sovereignty.
Right.
So he's partnering with Microsoft, I don't know who, and Exim Bank, DHC are financing him. The only thing he does is travel around the continent, signs MOUs. He come back to Washington, the bank is backing him. And he's only the aggregator.
The aggregator. Gotcha.
And if I could, I would just offer, just from a geopolitical context, in which anytime you're talking about foreign and international relations, I think you have to set it in its geopolitical context. Really, the real race. Someone had mentioned earlier on another panel about like the Cold War. You really have a technology war, and the technology war is being fought on the frontier of the continent, and truly, it's between two different paradigms, or two different countries, if you will. The U.S. and largely China. Then that's where the opportunities are coming. And so I think for those of us that want to get in and do business in Africa, there is that opportunity. But I wanted to put it in its geopolitical context. China is doing a lot of investment in terms of infrastructure, whether it's tech or otherwise. And as mentioned earlier, they are trying to overtake it. It's not hyperbola. It's not fear mongering. This was said by the president. Overtake the U.S. when it comes to AI innovation and supremacy. Yeah. Well, we don't know because it's a black box. I mean, so I don't query. I don't know how far China is versus us. Why is it done?
So what that keeps America.
Give her the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
One that keeps American superpower is the fact is the idea of democracy, the financial institution, the stability, the governance. When you go to any country, look at governance. America has been the economic model of the world, in terms of transparency, governance, rule of law, and everything, and we're losing that.
Yeah.
The moment the money will shift, and it's already shifting. Our economy was going down, was a little bit challenged since 2008. The reason why, what they call it la machine à billets, this notion of printing the money. Because America, because you have all the reserve, if you have a problem, you can print money. So the printing machine of money is in the U.S. because of that stability. Everybody's putting a reserve here. But now we're losing that because of instability. Even our ally don't know what we're doing. They don't trust American anymore. So that they're going to move their money somewhere else where they're sure that if they want their money, they can have access to it. So after Iraq war, we lost that standing, but it took Obama to become president for Americans to recapture that confidence, electing somebody called Barack Hussein. The entire world American became the model again. That printing machine moving to East to Asia came back. Barack stayed 8 years, we rebuilt. But now it's just completely straightforward. So people are already discussing about how they're going to trade. Are they going to trade in dollars? The agreement with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia came into expiration. I don't know if they renew it, but we're never going to see on the headline if they talk about the dollar, the trading the dollar. Kenya has already said they're trading with different. So even having that conversation already
Yeah.
is already assigned, and you have 3 more years to go. So, and after
Three
that, we don't
long
even know, maybe 4 years.
Yeah.
So, when are we going to regain that confidence that will stabilize the entire financial system? That's what I'm saying. China is, because China at least is predictable.
Yeah.
The government controls everything. They have the business model, their own capitalism they have created.
Yeah.
That some other country can start copy, because even the notion of democracy,
Right.
the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, it is not a democracy,
Right.
but people are not losing jobs. Morocco is not a democracy, but it's surviving. We have the Arab world in Tunisia, Libya. We went to democracy, everything is collapsing. Now, the Sahel, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Guinea, Burkina Faso control the entire world uranium for the nuclear. They had democracy, was collapsing. Now they have dictatorship,
It's stable.
who are giving confidence to the people, and it looks like it's working. So everything is shifted. We have no guarantee where the printing machine will go.
On that note, we're going to have to cut it off. Thank you, guys. It was a very interesting conversation.
We're gonna take 15.